basis for rest and purposes.
We've just concluded the Federal Executive Council meeting for Wednesday, the 11th of August. And I have with me my colleagues who will brief you.
The Federal Minister of Environment presented a memo today seeking for ratification of an anticipatory approval that we received from Mr. President on the submission of our final NDC, that is the Nationally Determined Contribution. This is part of the commitment that Nigeria made in 2016 during the Paris Agreement, that every country, after 5 years, will revise the commitment the country made in carbon down emission. So we, at the time, committed to reducing emission by 20% unconditionally, meaning we can do it ourselves, and also committed to reducing emission by 45%. That's by 2020. The 20% is by the year 2020, last year. And at the same time, we also committed to reducing 45% by 2030. That's again from the year 2016. And the reporting period is you revise it every 5 years. So we did first the interim report. A country is supposed to send in an interim report to the United Nations Climate Change Desk. And then before July 31st, you now submit the final. So we have done that. And part of this reporting is, again, for every country. Doing that will put the country on a good footing as far as climate change action is concerned. And this has a number of sectors that we depended on to be able to reach this, and is power, agriculture, transportation, waste, forestry. These are areas that we use as part of attending to that commitment that we made. And today we have gotten, again, the approval of the ratification following the anticipatory approval by Mr. President. So Nigeria is currently in good standing as the rest of the countries. About 100 countries have already submitted, and Nigeria is one of those. So we're in good standing with the Paris Agreement, the commitment we made. That's it. Thank you.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Ministry of Works and Housing presented a policy memorandum for the approval of federal roads and bridges tolling policy, and also a regulation that would provide legal framework for the tolling policy. You will recall that about 2 years ago you had asked me severally here when roads will be tolled, and I told you there's a lot of work. So we have taken another step. So let me be clear. Tolls are not going to start tomorrow. So let's just be clear about that. But the big step to actual tolling was taken today by presenting for approval the broad policy that will guide the tolling, so that local people, states, local governments, all those who manage roads, investors who want to come in, will know what our tolling policy is. And that will form the basis of their financial modeling, their investment decision. Now, when will they start? First of all, they will not start on the tolls will not start until the roads are motorable. So let's just be clear about those. There will be agreements that have to be in place, negotiated with government through the Ministry of Works and the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. So, but the highlights of the policy are, I think, what I would like to share. And some of the highlights are that we will adopt an open tolling policy as distinct from a closed tolling policy. The difference is that on the open tolling policy, which is what we were used to before, you pay toll at a barrier over a fixed or predetermined distance. The toll closed toll systems means that you will pay tolls over the distance you travel and the size of your vehicle. We haven't operated that before, so we are going back to what we know. We also approve that consultations must be done, willingness to pay surveys must be done before specific roads are tolled. We also presented and Council approved that only dual carriageways out of the 35,000 kilometers should be eligible for tolling by the federal government. And the dual carriageways represent only 5,050 kilometers out of 35,000 kilometers. So the total network of roads today, assuming we wanted to start today, which we are not, that will be eligible for tolling on the federal road network will be 14.3% of the total network. So 85.27% will not be eligible for tolling. We have seen that most of those dual carriageways also have alternative roads, but they are single carriageways. That's why we've left them. So the only exception to single carriageway are some bridges, and they are listed in the regulations. We also got approval that the tolls will be used to maintain the roads, to construct new roads as they accrue, and also to pay the investors who invest in building or completing a road and then take a concession on it. Those are the uses. We will also be going through a process of largely electronic toll collection and management system for audit and transparency. We will still have some cash at the very minimum and hopefully phase that out as we go ahead. We have proposed and Council has approved that certain types of vehicles be exempted from paying tolls. Those are bicycles, pedal cycles, tricycles, motorcycles, and other modes of 2- or 3-wheeled transport used mainly by disadvantaged members of our community. They will be entitled to a fully 100% exemption, as will be diplomatic vehicles and military and paramilitary vehicles. We conceive this as a national policy, and that's why we are making just very general framework so that states can also decide, subject to their local laws, and local governments, subject to their local laws, can do their own tollings based on all of these considerations as a broad framework. Well, how did we get here? We met with a lot of people. We met with government agencies, first of all, but more importantly, we met with private sector and organized labor. And nobody that we met with opposed the idea of tolling, at least none of the people we have met with. And some of the people you might wish to know are members of the National Assembly, the Senate, and House of Rep committees oversighting us so that they can take this feedback to their constituents. We had consultations with the Office of National Security Advisor, the Bureau of Public Enterprises, the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy will be helping us with the electronic and digital aspect of it. We also then met with those who are affected by the tolls themselves. Ministry of Transportation, who supervises a part of the transport business, and then the Road Transport Employers Association, the National Association of Road Transport Owners, NATO, and National Union of Road Transport Workers, and Ministry of Trade and Investment, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Council. These are some of the people who have, and they've made very useful input which have been embedded in some of the policies that I've spoken about. They've also recommended, and we've put it before Council, which are now embedded in this policy that we got, that people who live around toll plaza areas will benefit from what we call frequent user discounts, so that because they will be mostly impacted, unlike people who just pass once in a while. And this is global best practice around the world. So these are some of the highlights of the policy. And then we got a start-off tool, because certain investment decisions have to be made in the next few weeks. You remember I briefed you about the HDMI, about the concession about 12 roads spanning about 1,000+ kilometers. That process has kicked off. We have about 70-something applicants who are waiting for a policy. So we need to have a kick-off policy. So we've classified vehicles into 5 categories: the cars, the SUVs, and the jeeps as a second category, private bus and commercial bus, and third and fourth categories, and then luxury buses and trucks as a 5th category. So the start-off tools that we have for financial modeling and investment decision making: cars will pay 200 naira, SUVs and jeeps will pay 300, private bus will pay 300, commercial buses will pay 150, luxury buses and trucks will pay 500. Now, I think it is important to share with you how we arrived at these prices. Some of these prices were recommended by the operators themselves that I said we met. Some of them were also obtained from a survey we did across the 6 geopolitical zones, talking to households and talking to people in the garages, motor parks, and all of that, which was quite extensive. It covered, I think, about 17 or so states, or 22 states out of the national framework, just to get a sampling of what people felt. So in terms of comparison, for example, we also looked at the tolls being paid at Lekki, Ikoyi Bridge, and the Lagos Airport and Abuja Airport toll plazas as a basis for further comparison. And in doing that, we found that the 200 naira for cars, for example, is the same as Lekki, Abuja Airport, and Lekki Airport. That's the same rate. But it is 50 naira cheaper than Lekki Ikoyi Link Bridge. The SUVs and jeeps, the 300 naira that we got approval for, is the same as Abuja Airport and Lagos Airport, and 100 naira cheaper than Lekki and Ikoyi toll bridges. Those ones charge 400 naira for jeeps. Private bus is the same as Lagos Airport toll, 100 naira less than Lekki toll and Abuja Airport toll. Commercial bus, which is the cheapest here in sensitivity to the most vulnerable members of our society, the rate was 150 naira. And this is 50 naira higher than the Lekki toll, because commercial buses are not frequent in this toll. But it is 50 naira cheaper than the suggestion of the transport unions themselves. And it is equal to the maximum price that the willingness to pay survey picked up from the streets. Luxurious buses, 500. This is the same as Lekki Airport, but it is 500 naira cheaper than Lekki and 290 naira more than the maximum gathered from the willingness to pay survey. The reason why we have no difficulty with this is that those are the vehicles who bear the heaviest axle load and inflict the most impactful stress on our pavement. So this is the sum and substance, really, in broad outline. And then there's a tolling regulation, which now gives regulatory framework to this policy based on the provisions of the Federal Highways Act that allows the minister responsible for works to issue regulations that define policy of government with regards to roads. Thank you very much.
the Federal Ministry of Power have received the blessing of the Federal Executive Council by giving 4 approvals for the contract. One is the supply and installation of motorized portable hydraulic compressor for the TCN in favor of Mrs. Intel Equipment Nigeria Limited in the sum of $502,950 US plus 15,800,000 naira. The second approval was also received for the award of the contract and the supply. So for the award of the contract for the supply and delivery of 3 sets of online partial discharge measurement and monitoring equipment for the TCN in favor of Mrs. T&D Technology Limited in the sum of 874,800 United States dollars offshore plus 240,800,000 naira onshore. The delivery period of 9 months. And the third approval is the award of the contract for the repairs of 100 MBA and 4 sets of 60 MBA, 132-33 power transformers for TCN in favor of GT Engineering Nigeria Limited, in the sum of 661,220,000 US dollars offshore and 127,747 naira 781 sorry, let me say it again. 127,758,781 naira onshore with a delivery period of 12 months. And the last one, the approval was also granted for the award of the contract for procurement of 10 sets of 330 kV and 20 sets of 132 kV circuit breaker for the TCN in favor of Horsepower Engineering Trading Limited in the sum of $502,719,000 plus 114,571,500 naira with a delivery period of 6 months. Thank you very much.
Question, please? Yes.
Just if I may, with the Honorable Minister for Power's consent, just to weigh in on that subject, just to provide some clarification. The eligible consumer policy was an initiative of this administration in the period 2015 to 2019, and it was in response to the inability or the difficulty experienced by end users to take power that was clearly available and distribute it to the last mile. And the law provides that the minister could make those regulations, could make that policy that people who were heavy consumers, people I think who were consuming up to 1 megawatt or more, commercial concerns, factories, government institutions like this, could take their power directly from the GENCO who had the power. And in the aftermath of that policy, I recollect that NERC made regulations, because every policy must be followed by a NERC regulation before it becomes effective. As the Honourable Minister rightly pointed out, they are the regulator of the system, but the ministry is the policy maker. And that policy was to help consumers take electricity directly from Gencos who were producing power and couldn't sell it because the discos were not able to effectively take it through the last mile. So I'm surprised to hear that there is a reversal of that policy. It was quite controversial at the time, but I think common sense prevailed. And I recall that we monitored it then, and about 11 or 13 steel industries saw a reduction in the cost of diesel and the cost of generating power. I have that report somewhere. So I'm surprised to hear that there's a policy reversal. It's strange. Oh, I see.
Okay, now, the point of contention is those who have invested in this policy, who are supposed to be giving out to people who have also collected loans, they have stopped. That was at the end of last week. Now they are saying, out of about 30 companies that applied to be eligible, only one, Phoenix, has been licensed since. That they have, most of them have refused whatever. Why have you not been licensed? Okay, it's because of the license. Where did that be? That is what
Okay, then I think, as my colleague said, it would have been fairer to him to give him an opportunity to find out what really is going on. So it's not even a suspension if what you say is correct now.
Yeah.
I just have not got my license. It's delayed. If what you are saying is correct, people are just saying, I haven't got.
Yes, we have. Since the ratification of the Paris Agreement on Climate Change in 2016, and even before then, the government has put in a number of interventions to deal with the issue of climate change. You see, climate change did not just start in 2016. 2016 happens to be just like the culmination of the problem that shows there is need for an immediate action on climate change. So the government rolled out a number of things, and this was even before I became a minister. And we have done so much. I can give you an example. That was when we started also the issuance of green bond. Green bond issuance is to generate money solely for green projects. For example, issue of waste management, provision of solar power. A number of universities, federal universities, are currently operating on solar, almost completely off the normal grid, which we call business as usual. Even smart agriculture, improvement in the planting of trees. These are all measures, and so many others. Like I've mentioned, the sectors that were specifically targeted to reduce emission, power, which is the provision of solar, afforestation, reforestation, which help, of course, sequestrate the carbon, waste management, smart agriculture, because there's a lot of environmental component in agriculture, and several others. So these are all areas that we have. So based on our calculations, we have met that 20% last year. In fact, I can even say we have surpassed that. That's why we took that as unconditional. It's something that we know already we can, but the other one, no, we can't. And then another question on flooding, whether the current flooding in Lagos and some other places has direct implication from climate change. Absolutely. You see, climate change affects just about everything. Rainfall patterns can be changed by climate change, and is being changed. But also, if you are talking about urban flooding, it's also a combination of climate change and man intervention. People that will clog drain for runoff, people that will put garbage, people that will not even construct the correct drainage, or construct a smaller one than the one provided for the construction of whatever building or street. So these are issues that is a combination of climate change and man intervention. So let me just say, overall, what we are facing currently, just about anything you can think of has the effect of climate change in it, whether rainfall or dry spells, drought in places, land degradation, deforestation, all kinds of things has this effect of climate change. If you are talking about sea level rise, coastal communities are bound to have flooding because the sea is pushing on smaller rivers that will push into the inland and flood areas. So climate change is just basically impacting just about everything. Thank you.
Okay. A state government tool a federal highway, fundamentally and factually, the answer should be no. So, and I think just for understanding, the national road network for the entire Republic of Nigeria, Federal Republic, is about 200,000 plus kilometers of roads. And those roads belong in different proportions to the different levels of government. The federal government owns 35,000 kilometers of them, which I've discussed with you, which is about 16% of the entire road network. The state governments own about 18%. So the largest component of the roads actually are owned by the local governments, 66%. Those are the roads, the last mile roads, and they are the. So that's why I was talking about national policy and then a framework that every level of government can play with. Because if you are looking for investors internally or externally, you need to get an idea of what's the framework of investment. Feasibility of maintenance with these revenues, it's a learning field for us, and it is going to validate or invalidate some of the notions that have been held in the past that, oh, government should just give the road to private sector and that they can do a better job. So that process has started. So I briefed about the HDMI, which is about 1,000 kilometers of roads, 12 roads, under a plan for concession that we launched. So the plan is that the revenues that will come to those concessionaires not only from toll. There are other revenues on a road corridor. The right of way management, real estate, where now you have non-state actors just setting up anything they like there, advertising, and so many other things that can come to play and provide employment and revenue. And it is the cumulative combination of this that really speaks to it. And then if you maintain roads, because we intend, as I said, to complete those roads, make them motorable before we start the process of any toll. If you maintain roads, really, the cost is always cheaper over the long run. Before it becomes a problem, go and fix it. Sometimes it's just to repair the shoulder where water is beginning to seep in. So cost of maintenance is not necessarily the cost of construction. Which agency will regulate toll? It is a combination of agencies, really. You know that in government, no one agency can do anything on its own. So we always collaborate. If an investor, for example, wants to bring in X amount and needs a guarantee of government, I can't give that guarantee. So we have to work with the Ministry of Finance to help us secure that the money comes into our economy. There is an infrastructure concession and regulatory commission set up by statute. So we're working with them in this process. There will be areas of agreement. The Ministry of Justice will be involved in. So we're largely working with the power to toll rests in the minister responsible for roads under the Federal Highways Act. But tolling itself requires many processes to take place. There will be concessions, and to the extent that concessions are involved, you have the ICRC coming to have a role to play. So there is going to be a collaboration. And that's why I said we even had to interface with members of the National Assembly, because the laws and the regulatory framework that we need from time to time will require us to go back to them. And it is important that they are part of the system from the very beginning. Those who are above the law, or who see, nobody is above the law, really and truly. Nobody. But some people need to be educated about compliance. So concessionaires will have powers to enforce those laws in their concession agreement. They will have the opportunity to hire and to work with law enforcement agents within their territory and their area of operation. Perhaps you did not hear when I was speaking about the broad framework. Apart from frequent user discounts and vehicles such as tricycles, bicycles, and all of that, that were exempted, I also said that the policy contained an approval to exempt diplomatic vehicles and law enforcement, security, and paramilitary vehicles. I said that. The people who are not exempted are us, ministers. We didn't make exempt. We don't make policies to exempt ourselves. We are bound by them long after, right now, and when we leave. I pay toll now at Lekki. I pay at Ikoyi when I go home, and I have to cross to. So we are not exempt from the policies we make. Ibadan-Ilorin road. Well, you know we inherited that road, and you know where our finances were when we came. But what has changed is that there was essentially not sufficient budgetary provision for it. So, and what the contractors often see, once they look at the budget and they see it's not big, they maintain only a skeletal presence. But we have put that road in the Sukuk now. And if you are fair to us, you will see that in the last 2.5 to 3 years, when the Sukuk came into operation, there has been sustained progress. There has been no shutdown there. So we've had communal issues. The Baptist Convention, for example, had some churches there. And so because of them, they didn't want us to demolish those buildings. They appealed to us. So the process of exempting those buildings meant that we had to redesign that area. And that is also time and delay. And then we have a lot of compensation issues too, because it passes from the main road, the Oyo-Ogbomosho road that passes through town. So it passes through people's land, farmlands, and there are compensation issues too that we're dealing with. So these are all the problems that we don't share with you. It's our responsibility to just bring the solutions, and we're choosing what I think are progressive solutions.
Thank you very much. Minister.
Thank you very much. The question here is why NAC lifting the eligible customers' rights, something like that. I was thinking you will be fair to me in the sense why we are here is to answer questions that are from the Federal Executive Council. The approval we got from the Federal Executive Council, I was thinking you are going to base your question on this. It's like you are going out of the point. However, let me say the NAC is on its own. The NAC are the regulatory bodies, so they can, and they are based on the law. So whatever they ordered or whatever they said, if you did not follow process, definitely they have the right to stop you. But I'm not aware of what you are telling me right now, because as I say, they are autonomy on their own. They can give regulations, they can stop whatever based on the procedure. So whatever happened, whatever NAC say, I know they will not say it like that. Maybe you have not fulfilled what you are supposed to fulfill. So they have every right to stop you when you are not doing the right thing. And that is the little I can tell you on that. Thank you.
The first is about, which I want to take first actually, is the issue about the judgment of a Court High Court. One, it was never discussed in council. Two, I think the Attorney General will be in a better position to actually, respond to that court order, and I mean that court judgment, and what the federal government intends to do about that order. The other question I think has to do with you want to know what is the status of the conversation between us and the Twitter company. I want to say that the end for an amicable solution is very much in sight. We quite appreciate the anxiety of Nigerians who have been worried that 2 months after the suspension, we have not been able to finalize talks. But I just want to assure you that we have made tremendous progress. And when I say tremendous, really tremendous. We've engaged Twitter, both in writing. We've engaged Twitter. We set up a technical committee to engage Twitter. They set up their own committee too. They have met virtually, and they've exchanged correspondence about 3 times. And really, apart from dotting the I's and crossing the T's, we are actually almost there. And I want to say that the engagement has been extremely positive. It has been devoid of any acrimony. As a matter of fact, it's to the credit of Twitter that they admitted that they've never received any kind of informed or detailed or professional communication from any country as they receive from us. And they promised to, not only they promised that they were going to look into it, but we did actually we made very clear what we wanted from Twitter. Even though our report is not ready, even though we are still expecting more clarifications around some conversations with Twitter, I think I can share with you that some of the requirements, some of our conditions for reopening for Twitter operations to resume in Nigeria. And I'm glad that both the Honorable Minister of Works, just remember of the ministerial team, and Tolu, who also serves on the technical committee, they are both here. So if I'm wrong, they will correct me. I know that one of the conditions that we set was that Twitter must first, that in line with Nigeria's Companies and Allies Matters Act, that Twitter should establish legal presence in Nigeria, along with registration of Nigerian office with the Corporate Affairs Commission. And we think this is only fair, that if you want to do business in Nigeria, you must register first as a Nigerian company. And of course, for you to register in Nigeria, you must have an address. That's one of the conditions we gave Twitter. We asked that Twitter shall be mandated to employ a designated country representative. As of today, we are not aware of any Twitter representative in Nigeria. And we said that that representative shall be a staff of Twitter, but it must be one that has access to the global management of Twitter, so that he will not, so that he can serve as a liaison between Nigeria and Twitter, so they'll be able to. The country representative should also have a physical office address to Nigeria. Of course, with the head office in Abuja, and can also have, if they want, offices outside the capital. But we believe that it's important that Twitter should have a country representative who is high up enough in the Twitter, administration, that he can take directly complaints from Nigeria to Twitter. We also asked Twitter that Twitter, in addition to registering its Nigerian company, must also register with relevant regulatory authorities like NITDA, like NCC, like the Broadcasting Commission. Fourthly, we asked that Twitter will be mandated to retain a designated local agent to manage its engagement with federal government on operations in Nigeria. We also asked that Twitter should commit itself to working with the Federal Inland Revenue Service, on the tax liability, because we believe that if you make money from Nigeria, the law says you will pay taxes according to Nigerian laws. Of course, we also ask that they should immediately also start paying VAT and other, tax liabilities of any company registered in Nigeria. We also, the Nigerian government said that we proposed to Twitter that we should agree on a charter of online conduct for content management, so that this charter will guide both of us. We will agree on which content would be acceptable, which content will not be acceptable. So the two parties would, because we are very concerned about contents that are liable to, jeopardize the security, unity, and sovereignty of Nigeria. We believe that it's only fair in every country that this kind of is done. We also asked, that we will also agree on what is prohibited, publications, and when such are cited and they are brought to the attention of Twitter would remove or delete such a publication. We also asked that Twitter should provide information. We propose an ombudsman that will act, an independent ombudsman between both Twitter and Nigeria. And this ombudsman, independent ombudsman authority, who can report harmful accounts or suspected botnets or troll groups too, and then it will act accordingly. Then finally, we asked that Twitter should immediately establish a local compliance and grievance redress mechanism to be domiciled in Nigeria and to be, be staffed by persons who understand local context and our culture. So this is broadly what we have sent to Twitter. Twitter has responded, but there are a few areas that both parties are yet to agree on. And I think Tolu, probably the last communication was on the 10th. The last communication from Twitter was, I think, on Friday, right? Yes. So we're very much in touch with Twitter on this matter. And I must say that they've shown a lot of flexibility also. As opposed to what is being reported, the conversation has not been acrimonious at all. And I think we're encouraged that just recently, today, I know that Twitter has, India says that Twitter has now complied with all its demands. So we are very hopeful too that Twitter will also comply and oblige and comply with all our demands. But I must say that it's a matter of days rather than weeks. Hopefully, right? I hope in a few weeks' time or a few days' time, we should be able to reach an agreement with Twitter. There are many. I think we just have about 3 areas really where we have disagreement, and even those areas, not really disagreement. It's more about when will they do it. For instance, I look at the issue of office. Well, they are saying that probably it will be between 2022 that we can have an office in Nigeria. Those are the small gray areas that we are working on. But until and when we get the full reaction of Twitter, it discussed also at the committee level, and we also inform government. We will not be in a position to give you the full outcome. But that will be very soon, I can assure you.